Hello there. Just wanted to share a Whispering Ice character I made in Delirium League, since Delirium brought quite a few goodies for this style of character. So Whispering Ice is a staff that gives you Ice Storm. Ice Storm gains flat cold damage and duration per int. So you end up with quite a bit of duration and quite a lot of damage. So you can see I'm sitting at over 3800 int. For reference, a level 20 Firestorm will do 100 to 300 fire damage per hit at level 20, and Ice Storm matches that damage value with 1000 int. And so you can see we obviously have quite a bit more. So as far as building the character, mainly care about, are we res capped? Alright, cool. Then how much int and flat ES can we stack? So everything pretty much is, just ES and int. So helmet's got percentage and flat int, as well as quite a bit of ES. I'll explain the helm enchant in a moment. Similar thing with the body. Rings are mostly just int and some resist, since we are triple balancing for the Wise Oak, as well as an Elrion craft, so we can run no regen maps. Just get a bit of movement speed, obviously, on the boots, as well as aspect of the spider. On any place you have a free suffix, decided to get it here. Didn't really want to put it on the amulet, as, again, you want attributes everywhere you can get it. Using a Cyclopean Coil here, as we get the shock and ignite immunity, which is quite strong, especially since we're a CI build and quite vulnerable to shock. Flasks are Basalt Flask with anti-bleed, since we don't really have any fizz mitigations. Basalt Flask is quite helpful there. Sulfur Flask for Consecrated Ground on demand for the regen, as well as the Element immunity. Aziri's Promise for some damage. Wise Oak for damage and reduced LE damage taken, since we're triple balanced. And then a Quicksilver of Adrenaline for movement speed. Links are Woke Cold Pen, Cyclone with Woke Caswell Channeling. These are only linked together because that's all you need, and with that it keeps the mana cost at 2, which means it's free with the Elrion craft, which is obviously way cheaper than casting Ice Storm manually. LE Focus, Conk Effect, and Control Destruction. I did play around with using Woke Spell Cascade, but that would bring my frame rate below 1 FPS, so your mileage may vary. It is quite nice for the actual clear speed, if you can run it. Helmet is cast when damage taken with Purifying Flame. Flame Dash is just there, as it's the only place I had a free spot. And Ink AoE. You can swap out Ink AoE with something like Cold Snap, which I was using in simulacrums for the frenzy charges, though obviously it does nothing against bosses in something like the Cirrus fight. So that's where Ink AoE is better. And the Purifying Flame, gives Consecrated Ground up all the time for the regen, as well as the extra damage from our enchant. In the chest, we have a cast and damage taken Ball Lightning with Woke Curse on hit, with LA Weakness, Frostbite, and Enfeeble, so quite a bit of pen and a little bit of defensive elements right there. Gloves, we have Vortex with Bonechill and Arcane Surge for extra damage utility, and Vortex being instant means we can obviously just be spinning around and just pop it all the time. And then Clarity for the Watcher's Eye mod. And then boots, we have Enlighten linked with Purity of Elements, Discipline, and Summon Skitterbots. We're using Purity of Elements because most of our suffixes are attributes, which doesn't leave much room for resistances, and we still need to be res capped. As far as what the skill tree looks like, for Ascendancy, We're going Ascendant since you can get an extra 60 int and the extra skill points, which work quite well. Go Occultist for the +1 curse and stun immunity, and then Inquisitor for extra pen and the Ellie element immunity on Conk Ground. With the cast damage taken Purifying Flame, you have this up all the time, and you're practically then immune to Sap, Scorch, and Brittle, which is quite nice quality of life. The main point of the skill tree is to have as much room as possible between the start of the tree and the end, since we are using split personalities. There are 7 in this build, which give an absolute ton of flat int and flat ES. So for jewels, using a Watcher's Eye. While we're not using Hatred in the build, the cold damage mod does work when we have an Aura bot, though mainly we want the extra ES based off of mana, since int gives us quite a bit of flat mana to work with. And then the Fizz taken as fire helps again with dealing with Fizz damage, since we don't have much mitigation for that. Using a pure talent, you can get a Bestial with 25 int as well, and then flat ES, but went with this since it helped with the dex, since Woke Cold Pen does require quite a bit of dex. Pick up these Spell Leech nodes for the extra total recovery per second. See, we have 30% recovery, so almost 7k ES leech per second max. Percentage int. Using a Megalomaniac here for extra mana as ES and percentage int, though for simulacrums I was switching out to a Megalomaniac with Unspeakable Gifts, so the explosions do help quite a bit with clear speed, but obviously then the build loses a little bit of tankiness. Or int. We're not a crit build, so Ellie Overload's just free damage. Split personality. Brute Force Solution, as it's quite a cheap jewel to get Corrupted Blood immunity on. We're using 2 large cluster jewels. We mainly want Prismatic Heart for the extra resist, as well as Cold to the Core with how much int we're stacking. It's quite a bit of percentage increased cold damage. And then 2 split personalities. Another split personality here. Zealot's Oath, since we're got plenty of sources of consecrated ground. It does give us quite a bit of regen. If I pop my flask here, you can see we have about 2k ES regen. Another cluster jewel with Prismatic Heart and Cold to the Core. Then for other cluster jewels, we want Enduring Focus for endurance charges to further supplement our Fizz mitigation, and then Hexbreaker for curse immunity. Then split personality, and then over here we want Wish for Death for Culling Strike and Master of Fear for Unnerved against cursed enemies, which we pretty consistently do against bosses with the cast when damage taken Ball Lightning setup, especially since Woke Curse on hit lets us apply it to hexproof enemies. And then the rest of the jewels are split personalities. For single target, the enchant you would want on your boots would be Pen if you haven't killed an enemy recently, but not a fan of running lab, so I just stuck with regen if hit recently. And then for our anoint, we're allocating Tranquility, which gives Percent increased ES as well as Transfiguration of Soul. Transfiguration of Soul does actually work with the percentage increased int or percentage increased ES you get from int. So this gives us almost 200% spell damage as an enchant, which is quite strong. So that's pretty much what the build's like. Didn't mention earlier that I designed it to play with an aura bot. Since we're not running hatred or zealotry, those have full effect on us, as well as just the other defensive auras like grace. And then malevolence actually helps out a bit too, since it increases the duration of ice storms, so it helps a bit in simulacrums or just single target situations in general. So overall, quite a fun build, quite lazy. For the most part, one button build outside of flasks and hitting vortex from time to time. Highly recommend this build if you just want something lazy, tanky. It still does quite good single target. So anyways, good luck, Exiles, and stay sane.